Ashwini Vethakan. This week on Talking Business, Anushan Selvarajah speaks to Channa Silva, the CEO of Lanka Clear, on the digital payment infrastructure in the country.
Welcome to the show, Channa. Good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the pandemic has taught us of the necessity of digital payment platforms. In that light, how do you see the digital payment infrastructure here in Sri Lanka?
The infrastructure for digital payments have been there for some time. I think the main problem was the adoption of those services has been the problem. Actually, one of the fundamental problems that we faced was Sri Lanka, together with many countries in the region, we are a cash-based society. Most of the payment transaction used to happen via cash. And one of the primary reasons for that is actually we are a well-banked country, right? If you step out of your house or office, you would run into a bank branch or ATM. So you are not short of cash wherever you are. So even if you go to a rural village, you would still find bank and branches and ATMs. So for people, having access to cash was not a big problem, right? And because of that, the adoption of digital services was not very compelling until the pandemic hit and until there was curfew where you couldn't go to an ATM or you couldn't go to a bank branch. People didn't really find a reason to move.
Channa, now having digital payment platforms for the private sector is one thing. But what about the public sector? Now, platforms such as this could make a huge difference. Now, do you see what sort of projects are there in place right now in terms of bringing the public sector also onto these platforms?
I mean, we've implemented, as a first step, we implemented payments to customs. Because the businesses, original problem was the customs was open 24/7, but the banks were only open until 3 p.m. Weekdays. Right? So even if the customs was open during weekends, people couldn't make a payment and clear the goods. So that was a fundamental problem that was there. So we solved that by putting a solution where we link the customs to all the banks through our system. And now, so previously, before we put this system, trader had to, to make a payment to get the goods cleared, had to go to his bank, get a pay order, then go to one of the state banks and give that. And there was a significantly difficult or complex process. Now what we have done is we have linked customs through our network to at least 13 to 14 banks in Sri Lanka, where a customer can just log into his or her internet banking facility and customs payment will appear as an option in whatever bank that they are in. It doesn't have to be the state banks. And then once in real time, the customs will provide the information to make that payment. So customer just has to put in his CUSDEC number, and in real time, the system will pull the payment information to the customer's internet banking. And then if the customer agrees to that, he or she can make the payment. The payment will instantaneously go to the state bank, wherever the customs account is, and the customer will instantaneously receive a receipt number, which he or she can take a printout and go and get the goods cleared. So this can even be done on a Sunday night or a Saturday night. So that was the first service to go live, and we see more than 5 to 6 billion rupees worth of transactions happen through this system now, and it's growing. We have also enabled BOI. Similarly, BOI is also connected. Sri Lanka, the Inland Revenue Department is we have completed the implementation, and hopefully within the end of this month or beginning of next month, Inland Revenue Department will go live so that customers can make their tax payments using their internet banking. Sri Lanka Ports Authority is going to come on board. They have already come on board. We are doing the implementation, and all the municipal councils and urban councils where the rate payments will also, we are working with them. So hopefully within the next 6 months to 1 year, I think we will have a decent number of government departments on board.
On that note, what are the bottlenecks that you see when it comes to rolling out these platforms?
Yeah, some of the bottlenecks are some of the government departments do not have systems. So even if we can link the payments of banks, when they don't have a system, there's nothing to link. So for example, actually government revenue, almost 85% of the government revenue comes from customs, inland revenue and excise department, right? So our first target was to link those three. So we have been able to link customs, second is inland revenue, but excise department does not have a proper system. So there's nothing for us to link. So once they have a system, we can link. But so that is one primary bottleneck. The second one is also getting actually banks on board has been there have been delays because getting them to activate all the different departments. There are certain developments, so there are some delays in that. So we are actually pushing them to come on board faster, so that the services can be provided easily to their customers.
Now, you've spoken before of the country adopting a local card system. What are the benefits of this?
What we see was, when we look at the card market in Sri Lanka, I mean, cards have been present for more than 2 decades, right? But when you really look at the number, and if you do a little bit of math, right, we have as a country, according to the payments bulletin, published by Central Bank, as a country we have issued almost 25 million debit cards out of a 21.3 million population, right? So technically we have more cards than the population, right? But if you really take the numbers of payments bulletin, where the banks publicize the total volumes of transactions, when you actually take the total debit credit transactions together, and you take the total point of sale terminals in the country, and if you just divide by that and also divide by number of days for a year, what we see is the average transactions per terminal a day. So what we found is both debit and credit together, it's less than 4 a day. So what it means is, even with 25 million plus debit cards issued in the market, people are not using the card. So then when we looked at why this is so, what are the possible reasons for this? One is obviously, the acceptance of merchants, right? Some of the merchants may have a terminal, but some of the international card schemes out there, what we call the merchant discount rate, where a commission is charged by a bank from these merchants, it goes up to 2 to 3% of a transaction. Even though it may be acceptable to large supermarkets and other big chains, but when you take the normal SMB merchant, I mean the corner grocery shop, probably the profit from a loaf of bread may be 5% for that. And would the merchant be willing to partake 3% out of a 5% with the bank? And the second problem is actually the people wanting to use the cards for payments, right? So what we have seen is most people are using this card as an ATM card to go and withdraw cash, right? Not as a debit card. So I think there has not been sufficient traction created to push people to move towards debit cards, usage of debit cards. The third problem I see is actually, if you really look at the retail-based transactions, most of the transactions, when you go and make a payment to a retail shop, the funds have to travel from one financial institute to another. But for this, each and every transaction, we have to pay these international card schemes almost 15 to 20 rupees in dollars, right? So and majority, more than 95% of these payment transactions are between two local entities. And when you look at the total volume, we are losing billions of rupees in dollars for a year for these transactions, which are local.
We're going for a short break now. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back to the show as we continue our discussion on the adoption of digital payment platforms in Sri Lanka with the CEO of Lanka Clear, Channa Silva. What are your thoughts on services like PayPal, Channa, now with the pandemic? Now work from home or remote working is being encouraged, and there are a lot of opportunities out there for Sri Lankans to work with companies abroad, yet most of these opportunities require a PayPal account or some similar account. What is your thought on why that this has not come in here to Sri Lanka yet?
I mean, I have been working with Central Bank to get PayPal into Sri Lanka over the last more than 2 years. The simple reason for PayPal not being here, a lot of people point a finger to the regulator, saying there are regulatory issues, which is absolutely not true. The main problem is PayPal is not interested in coming to Sri Lanka. That is the simple reason, because for them, they have to make an investment to set up operations in Sri Lanka, because there's a lot of paperwork that they have to do, because it's a US company, set up operations. So for their investment, they are not certain how many transactions will go through their network to Sri Lanka. So because nobody's putting up their hand and saying that I will do 10 million transactions a month or 100 million transactions a year, or no figure. But for them, if they go to India or much larger the country, they are guaranteed of a significant volume. So for them, it's an investment decision, and Central Bank has tried many times, written to them and asking them to set up operations. They have not shown absolutely no interest.
Channa, what lessons can we learn from countries which have already implemented this full range of digital payment platforms? Take China, for example. It's very simple there. You just tap your phone and go.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of areas. First thing is the discipline of the people, right? So that is one aspect. Where when people are told that this is the best thing for you, they would stick to it, right? We are at least I'm happy that people are wearing face masks. So which is a discipline which I didn't see previously in Sri Lanka. So I think the lessons is the benefits that it brings to an economy. I think that is the fundamental thing what the population should be aware. Right? First of all, I don't think people are aware that cash itself is a huge burden to the economy, right? Because you have to print, distribute, recycle, transport, all that, right? That has a significant cost to an economy. In general, a rule of thumb is it costs the country almost 1.5% of GDP to maintain cash, right? If you compare this with in 2018, 2019, unfortunately the numbers are not out. For entire education in Sri Lanka, we only spend 2.1% of GDP. This includes teacher salaries and everything. And for cash circulation, we spend 1.5%. So our objective is, if we create a dent of say 1/3, if we pull 1/3 of this cash transaction into digital, we will save 0.5% of GDP to the country, to the economy, which can be used for social welfare and other benefits rather than wasting on cash. So that is a significant benefit on the economy. In addition to the cash, the social issues. Now, for example, if you really look at SME sector, right? An SME sector predominantly deals with cash transaction. It's cash. So what happens is they, and most of these people earn a decent living. I mean, I'm talking about prior to COVID, right? But they used to earn a good living, right? I mean, if you take a simple three-wheeler guy, right? He used to make at least 50 to 60,000 a month. I mean, easily, right? But the guy never deposits this money in a bank account. It's cash in, cash out, right? So he never builds a credit history with a bank. Unlike some of us who work and we have pay slips, our money goes to the bank knows how much we earn. Whereas these guys have no way of proving their credit worthiness to a bank. So they will never get a loan. So what is the option for them? If they don't have money, they have to go to a loan shark who charges almost 10% interest daily. If we are able to successfully in getting these people into digital payments, the money will actually go and hit their bank account. Also, another area we need to address is, now we are dealing with cards and other digital payments at the top of the pyramid merchants, like the food cities, the supermarkets and so on. But what happens is, let's say we are encouraging people to go and make a payment to a three-wheeler guy. We'll take that example. But the same three-wheeler guy has no option for him to pump petrol. He has to go to ATM and withdraw cash, right? Or if he wants to buy, vegetables from a Sunday fair, he has to go to ATM, withdraw cash, and go and make a payment. So the cycle breaks down. So if we are to sustain this end-to-end, we also need to get them also to use their mobile or card at those locations, right? And one last one is actually most of the SME merchants do not accept electronic payments because of fear of taxation, right? Right? And they think the tax guy will come after them, if the transaction gets recorded. But actually, from January or April this year, the tax bracket went up to 3 million a year. Right? So up to 250,000 rupees, you don't get taxed. So how many of these SMB merchants make 250,000 a month, which is very rare. So majority of the merchants, even though they fear this, they are not in the tax bracket anyway.
Just to wrap things up then, Channa, in terms of policies, what would you like to see being brought in to facilitate companies like yours in implementing such services?
Yeah, so one area actually what we want to see is payment is only one segment of the entire process. So there's a document process, there's invoicing, there is, so much other documentation prior to, I'm not talking about retail payments in a general payment to some entity, right? So most of these things are manual right now, right? And you have to physically sign a check or you have to physically sign a document. But, actually Sri Lanka introduced digital signatures in 2009, right? And all these documents can be electronically submitted via digital signature. So I think from a policy wise, I think government should start, because the legislation, the law is there. Electronic Transaction Act is very clear that digital signature is acceptable in a court of law. It's very, very clear, and it's been there for some time. So any organization can start using electronic documents. We've seen the work from home during the pandemic required people to digitally sign, because there was no way. The courier services were not working, the postal department was not working to send so I mean, even in our case, all the payment requests to our banks, from home we digitally signed the documents and sent to the bank. So bank accepted. If the government, there is a government level push for to move people to use digital. I think the biggest problem for most of the banks and financial institutes and whoever who has implemented this solution is the consumer adoption. That has been the biggest problem, because you can go and invest, but there's no guarantee that how many customers will come and sign up. So I think from a policy level, if even at the government level, if they say electronic payments are preferred as opposed to a cash or a credit, check payment, I think there will be more and more people likely to move, because I think that's where fundamentally things break down. Because more and more you accept cash payments, people are not compelled to use digital.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that at least by the beginning of 2021, Sri Lanka will be further along in terms of the technology needed for digital payments for services. Thank you very much for joining us, Channa. It was great talking to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for having me. Thank you.
After a short break, Ashwini Vethakan will be back with an overview of the export sector's performance. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Ashwini Vethakan, and let's take a look at the island's export report card for the last 6 months. Sri Lanka's exports were down 26% year-on-year in June to $894 million, but extended a steep recovery seen since May after the coronavirus lockdown ended. According to the country's Export Development Board, personal protection equipment related exports came in at $107 million in June. Customs statistics reveal that earnings from merchandise exports recorded a double-digit growth of 11% in July compared to a year back. What's more, earnings from merchandise exports increased by 20% in July on a month-on-month basis. Total export earnings between January and July were recorded at $5.4 billion compared to $6.9 billion in the corresponding period of the previous year. However, the gap created due to COVID-19 in April decreased further. This is a 73% achievement of the revised merchandise exports target of $7.5 billion in 2020. Major exports such as apparel, textile, tea, coconut and coconut-based products, rubber and rubber-based products decreased by 25%, 12%, 19% and 4% year-on-year respectively in the period from January to July. According to the chairman of the Sri Lankan Apparel Exporters Association, while the Sri Lankan apparel industry shows signs of recovery from the impacts of the pandemic, with the lockdowns being cautiously lifted worldwide, no confirmed orders had yet been passed that would allow factories to operate at full capacity. This would result in a majority of manufacturers operating their factories at a loss, even though they would function at reduced capacity and put them in a vulnerable position. Meanwhile, in the world of tea exports, according to the weekly reports of the Tea Exporters Association, the overall auction offerings were fairly similar to the previous week and totaled at 6.95 million kilograms. Large leaf teas continued to attract reasonably good demand, whilst the high and mid-grown small leaf varieties witnessed disappointing sales considering the overall quality of teas on offer. In terms of the service sectors, which includes ICT and BPM, construction, financial services, transport and logistics, and wellness tourism, the EDB estimates exports of $2 billion for the period between January and July 2020, compared to the $2.4 billion recorded the previous year, representing a decline of 14%. That's all we have for you this week. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you and stay safe.